Hey, Susan.
Hey, hello everyone.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
I'm just looking at trying to admit everyone in the waiting room. Yeah, I think I got everyone for now. Okay, cool. Let's get started. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Thanks for confirming. Is that Joshua?
We can see your screen, Susan.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
Cool, thanks. Just first up, we just released beta Ratify 1.1. Let me correct this typo on the announcement section. So there's a lot of features that just got shipped. So we have the TLS support, parallel execution, and CRD support. So yeah, try it out and let us know what you think. I have pre-populated the agenda list today. Before we start, is there anyone who want to add any items to the discussion items? Okay. Then we'll start with what we have right now. So under action items, actionable agenda items, we have one PR that I think Xinghe posted, and Binbin had a concern on the integration, the future integration with the notary trust store. Binbin, do you want to, have you had a chance to review Xinghe's comment?
Not yet. I'm logging the right.
No problem. I can directly say, the problem is that the current change is only based on the current Ratify AKV CSI secret design. So currently it only supports one keyword and mounted on one mount path, but Kubernetes does not support multiple volume mounts on the same mount path. So if we still using the ADO keyword CSI secret feature in the future, I think it cannot avoid to mount it on different paths.
Yeah, we do have a plan to implement our own key vault fetching logic, but we're don't know the exact timeline for that yet. But meanwhile, we're just using what we have with the CSI driver. Xinghe, when you specify new certificates, so like if you just added a certificate to the key vault that's already configured for Ratify, do you just update the values file and you will be able to load the new certificates without a pod restart?
Sorry. Do you mean
I'm just wondering, right here, like it's now going to take in an array of certificate names, right?
Yes.
So if there is a, let's say you've in your key vault, you've added a new certificate, what do you have to restart Ratify for the new cert to be reflected?
Currently it still needs or if it is only the third update, it will no need to restart. Just like current Ratify, how it works.
And if you added a new, if you defined
Add
a new
new
key vault,
yeah.
then you'll need
Yes.
to,
Correct.
got it. Sorry, back to the Binbin's comment. Binbin, can you elaborate on the notary verifier can only load from one specified directory? Don't we, today with Ratify, don't we support an array of certificate path like an array of directories?
Yeah, I think the behavior is different between the new notation, new notary and the notary we are using. So for the one we are currently using, we just in Ratify config, we just have an array of like third paths, and we just load and pass those paths and into an array of like certificates, and we just pass those certificates to the new verified one. We create a new notary verified. But right now, if we are using the new notary, and we have to, so we can control the path, or we can control what certificates we want to pass in. We can only specify a directory or a path, and the notary will load those certificates from that path. So we lost the control on the like passing the certificate from a directory or an array of directory. We can only just specify a directory, and the notary will do the loading and passing workflow.
Okay, and the notary trust store, the trust store itself, is it an array of objects?
No, trust store is if you click the trust store, yeah. Okay, scroll down. Yeah, so basically
should we be looking at the policy or the store?
The store. I think
the store. Okay.
Yes. So if you see this like tree, actually we just specify the trust store path, and the notary will load the certificates under this trust store. So like currently we have X files 9, and we have like CA and TS. Oh, no, it's not TSA. I think it's outdated. We have CA and like signing authority schemas, and for within each schema, we can specify a lot of like named stores. So in Ratify, we just want to simplify the usage, so we will only specify one named store. So in this case, maybe we just have like ACME-Rockets store, and we will move all the certificates under this named store. So we just specify the path, like the trust store, X59, CA, SME, Rockets, and the Ratify, oh, not right. The notary will load those certificates on this path.
Hi, Bing. I have
go ahead, Sinke.
Yeah.
Thank you. About currently, we transfer the verifier to CRD, correct? So it declares it currently declares the third path. But if we introduce trust policy in the future, you mean we share the one specific third path? So what we need to declare in the verifier verifier CRD in the future, because the third pass will be useless. Is that correct?
So you mean only if you want to specify different stores?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we want, so currently I mentioned I just want to simplify the usage, but we can have a lot of named store. In this case, like we have SME-Rockets, SME-Rockets CA2, Orbit networks. So we can have like 3 named stores, and it can be controlled by the trust policy. So in the trust policy, we can specify maybe like 3 policies. Yeah, right. If you scroll down, like we can specify like 3 different kind of trust policies. For each policy, we can specify the named store it applies to.
Okay, so in the future, it will not be the current verifier CRD. It might be some new CRD like the trust policy.
Yes, and actually, but there is a limitation. So also trust stores and then also named stores, for example, like SME, SME2, Orbit networks, they should be under the same path. In this case, it should be under the trust store X59 CA. So all of them should be under the same path.
Okay, looking back at the Xinghe's proposal, given we don't have our own key vault fetching logic yet, is option 2 feasible as a workaround for now, Binbin?
Yes, Ratify.
So I don't know if Xinghe means like we can have some of our own like wrapping logic in the, when we instantiate the verifier, we can gather all the certificates. So then we pass a single path to the constructor of notary.
So in this case, your suggestion is to essentially encode the directory structure of the trust store into the CRD for the notary verifier to some
Yeah.
degree. Okay.
Yeah. I'm not very sure what if we that's one, because in the future we as being said, we may deprecate the AKV CSI secret. So I can also deprecate the related changes on it, because it is in fact not very necessary.
Mm-hmm. So before we deprecate the AKV CSI secret, Eric, do you have any concern on option 2?
According to so
I imagine the implementation is like when we construct the verifier, we will look under all the directories.
I guess part of this also we would have to consider with the CRDs, where today we only support one of each, right?
What do you mean?
So like you can only make one notary CRV or CRD, right? Like I don't know that we elegantly handle at all the case where you make more than one notary verifier.
There's only one. In fact, I personally tried it in my local test. It seems it can support multiple. Yes, it works.
Okay, yeah. So part of where this gets interesting from Ratify's perspective is we have this notion that you can have more than one notary verifier. And Trust Store to me seems like sort of a way that you can use the same verifier to handle an array of different artifacts, like, or like images come from here should be signed with this, etc. So that's sort of where I was always thinking, like, how, like, maybe we need to support both, but do we? Like, if you're going to have a specific notary verifier in the context of Ratify that has only a specific group of certificates, how much of trust policy do you really need to scaffold? Like, I guess if you wanted a notary verifier that had these two certs and one of them should only be used for containers from a specific registry, then it still makes sense. But if users are only going to care that for the notary verifier that they have configured, that all of the containers regardless are signed by a specific cert, then there's really not a ton of need to scaffold out a giant, like, whatever trust policy, or essentially add all that complexity. Like, you just have a bucket and put all the certs in the bucket. So I guess that's an open question that I would have, or that we should consider when figuring out how we want to incorporate trust store into the verifier model.
Yeah, I actually do have on the agenda, Binbin have started a kind of like an integration design doc for how we're going to integrate with Notary Go Beta 1. And I think this is a good audience to walk through the required changes, and then we can hear feedback from Jimmy and Kara, and also Xinghe, while you're looking to integrate like
I
get this
see.
into Azure.
Okay, so maybe some of my concerns have already been there in the doc, and I just need to go read them.
Yeah, Binbin, do you want to? I just had a specific question, or a comment in there. Do you? Are you okay with walking through this document right now?
Yeah, sure.
Yep, and okay. And for this PR, we can just use this as a discussion thread. Maybe reviewing the integration would help us answer that comment as well. So yep, I can stop sharing and give control to you, Binbin, or I can scroll through this document, and you can just tell me to go down. Which one do you prefer?
Yeah, I think you can control the.
Okay, yeah, just tell me when to scroll, and then I'll move the cursor.
Yeah, so actually you can scroll down to the future usage in Ratify. I think we just care about the difference between the current usage and the future usage. So for the verified, firstly, for the verified construction, I just mentioned that currently we pass the certificates from the mount pass and just pass to the verified struct or the object. And now we need to, because I have completed the code, so I know what we require for now. And so currently we need to firstly, we need to load the policy or the trust policy from the specified path. And this is done by the Ratify. So we can just put this trust store like in any path. And but for the trust store stuff, we need to firstly we should add those to the directory under the trust store X file that select CA and name the store. And so we just specify the path and configure it while we creating a new verifier. And then we do in the verify stuff. When we do the verification, the notary will load those certificates from the specified directory and do the verification. And also for the signature verification, we mentioned that the old way we have an offline verify, and in beta 1 there is no more offline verify API, but in RC1 it comes back. So I think we don't need to discuss it. And so I think the problem, we have some problems on the new notary integration. One is about the trust policy. So because we don't have it before. Now, for the basic usage, I think it's simple to support it. We just add a new mount path and add trust policy, and it works for now because I have done testing. But next we want to, because I think with Xinghe before, we want to make this trust policy, like for example, we want to make it a CRD, or maybe it can be put on some like cloud services. For like we can support both like AWS and Azure. Like in Azure, we have Azure policy. Maybe we want to put it in the Azure policy, so we don't need to configure it manually. But I think it's a long-term task, and we will not done in like 1 or 2 weeks. And another thing is about the trust stores. So currently we support passing in an array of certificates path. And next so in the new notary verifier, we want to have just a single path. And for example, a path to the trust store. And there can be a lot of named store under that. The problem is that actually, so all the named stores should be controlled by the trust policy. So in trust policy, we can like specify one policy for each named store, or maybe one policy. So for each policy, they can control the scope of the registry or the want to control, and also for the named store we want to use. So I think if we want to support Xinghe's PR, we just need to have a trust policy that specifies like each policy for each named store. But there might be some difficulty because I looked through the Xinghe's PR, we just list trust stores by index. So it might look like notary 1, notary 2, notary 3. I think it's hard for the users to know which one corresponding to the right stores. And for all of those. Yeah, I think these are 2 problems we might want to like overcome or discuss.
Xinghe, like instead of the index of the index like 1, 2, 3, 4, is it possible to get the name of the key vault and maybe use that instead of the index?
Yes, I can get the keyword. Yes, I can do that. But one problem is that well, it's possible that a customer says the values they are using the same keyword name, so then they cause the conflict.
I see. So like, what do we do when they're duplicates?
Yeah.
So the name, I see. So like for the CRD for the CSI driver, does the name of the object, does the name come from the key vault name, or can we enforce that? So for example, you can't have 2 CRD with the same name in Kubernetes, right?
I think the CRD name could okay. Wait a minute. So but for this for my PR, it is to update the chart configuration. So I think it is not directly related to CRD for now. It is related to Helm install. So the customer behavior is not to create a new CRD, is still modifying the chart values, chart values.yaml. So in this YAML file, I'm afraid that they declare two certs from the same keyword. Is it possible, or we should directly reject it?
I'm just trying to
But-
think. Maybe we can follow up on this, like kind of like an edge case.
But anyway, if we decide to directly reject this value input, I think it is okay to it is okay to rename rename it from the index to the keyboard name. It is okay. It should be okay. But I'm just afraid that the customer set duplicated ones.
Duplicate ones, I see. Sorry, just admitting a few folks from the waiting. I think there are people who just joined because they had other meetings that just wrapped up.
Okay.
Cool. And I think Binbin, your concern is, so from the customer's perspective, they provided, they configured their key vaults in the CSI CRD. And then when they set up Ratify, they have to know the internal path of where these certs are mounted in the trust policy file.
Yeah, I think it's not an absolute path, but it should be something like, can you check? Can you go back to the notation trust so link?
Yep. Is there a link here?
No, just the page you just opened.
Sure.
Yes, so if you scroll onto the trust policy schema, yeah, so this example, we need to specify CA and the ACME rockets. So this is the path.
I see. So in the future integration with trust policy, the customer would have to provide the trust policy to configure
Yes, actually,
the
so
notation verifier.
yeah, so if we are using the new notation verifier, I think everything is controlled by the policy. We can have this trust store like mounted to any path, but it should be like following the spec notation specified. For example, we need to put it on the like CA SAME rockets path.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Let's walk through the like the plan for integration, and then we can check with the group to see if there's any feedback.
Okay.
Yep. So let me go to the. So we've talked about the problems and.
So one challenge that I see with encoding stuff directly into the trust policy is you kind of obscure, once you get to the like gatekeeper policy level, you've sort of obscured some of this control, right? Like it's directly encoded into the trust policy, which is a ratify configuration. So you're no longer like knowing what you're evaluating at the gatekeeper policy level is like you don't know. Like you could, from a policy perspective, you could have two clusters that return the same result for a Rego that are using different trust policies, right? So that's one concern that I have, which, you know, we could potentially get around that via integrations with specific cloud providers, but that would just be one concern to call out, is you're sort of burying some of that. And the same thing with like the audit, like you have different levels of enforcement.
Yes.
And so
Right.
now we have enforcement levels in Ratify, we have enforcement levels in Gatekeeper, and then we have enforcement levels in the verifier itself.
Right.
So
it's
like,
kind of weird.
yeah, so I'm just kind of wondering, like, should we, like the main thing that we're getting from trust policy is a link between registry scopes and specific certificates, right? Like that's the value add that we don't have an easy way of accomplishing right now. So like, should we focus on how that affects the integration specifically?
Yes, but actually, I think we can couple the Ratify policy and the notary policy, because notary is a built-in plugin. So I think it's reasonable to have those two policies in maybe one place. And actually we can, because currently we just load the policy from a file and pass to the verifier. So I think we don't care about how we get this policy. We just need those policies like passed to the notary verifier.
I'm just trying to think, how do we combine the two, Bin?
Yeah, Xinhe, I think we have seen it before. Maybe we can have this policy pass from like Gatekeeper to Ratify.
Yes. Yes. In fact, currently we only pass in the Gatekeeper Rego, we only pass the image digest to the Ratify server. So if we make the relationship that one policy, one trust policy, one Rego, so what about we pass all the trust policy properties to the Gatekeeper server?
Yeah, I mean, so we would have to use, I think with pass-through, we added the ability to add like arbitrary information to the verifier response. So you would have to, if you still wanted to look at stuff at the Gatekeeper level, you'd have to, whatever we do with trust policy, you'd have to add whatever important bits were there to the response to make sure you can still act on it at Gatekeeper in Rego. So it's, yeah, it's possible.
So Eric, what would the workflow be? So the customer would need to provide a Rego and the trust policy for notation, and
yes,
Ratify
so,
will pass something back to Gatekeeper to block or allow the deployment.
yeah, so if you wanted to handle it in Rego, like with the specific things, like let's say you could look for level, and if it was audit, you can ignore. You know, you could look at registry scopes, and you could potentially match the name of the given, like, oh, if there's anything where the registry from the pod spec matches the registry scope and the verifier result is fail, then you could do it that way. So there's ways you can do it. It's just I'm still having reservations about how this is really gonna
Yeah, well, let Bin run through the rest of the document, and
sure,
whenever we have feedback or suggestion, we can add to the doc. Like we've have the link in the meeting notes, so we can add our ideas anytime.
Yes, okay. So for the trust policy integration, let me check. Yeah, so I think currently I'm following the solution too. So we will mount the trust policy file into a path, and so the notary will load the trust policy, or not load. We just have this. We just mount the path, and Ratify will pass this trust policy document and pass it to the notary verifier. So it works for now. As I think it works for the stage 1, and for the next stage, we might want to have this trust policy as a CRD or maybe like pass from gatekeeper or something. I'm not like, I don't have a conclusion for now.
So to be clear, if I understand it correctly, the trust policy will be configured as a mapped volume when Ratify is created. Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
And then that will be accessible by the plugin, if it needs it.
Actually, it's not accessible by the plugin. When we initialize the verifier and the Ratify and verifier, it will just pass this trust policy and create the verifier. So the verifier doesn't need to load this file directly. All the loading and passing stuff will be done by the Ratify.
So if a custom plugin for notation needed the trust policy, you would have to load it on its own?
Yes.
Okay.
And for the trust store, the solution 1 is that we yeah, I think this for the trust store, I'm following the second solution as well. So we just provide the root path of the trust store. So in this case, it's a path to the trust store name. And then we want to add all the certificate files on the each named store. So in Ratify, in my current design, it will be just one named store. And because we can have all the certificate files on it. And then we can specify in the trust policy, the trust store. In the trust policy, we can specify the trust store's name and the scope. So, and also there is a signature verification level, which can be a strict, audit, and a log, and there are 5 levels for now. The strict is the most strict level, and we can configure different levels in the trust policy.
Just so I understand, the section you have here relating to the directory structure, today in notation that cannot be overridden, right? The constructor doesn't take a path. Okay. Womp womp.
Should I scroll down, Bin?
Yeah, please. I think we don't need to discuss it. Can we go to stage 2? Yeah, so stage 2, I think we want to convert. Can scroll up. Yeah. So I think we want to have source stuff because in stage 1 we just have the basic support, for the new notation. And in the next, I think we want to have them in like CRD, like the policy and for trust stores, but I don't have an exact plan for that for now. I'm just supporting the basic usage. And for the policy stuff, as we just mentioned, that we don't have a conclusion for now. The policy and the trust stores. And actually for the trust store, I think we need to consider the multi-tenant scenario. And if we want to have multi-tenant, then we should have multiple named stores, I think. Is that correct?
Well, for multi-tenancy, I think historically we've discussed addressing that by having particular verifiers scoped by namespace. So rather than trying to handle it all with multiple trust policies and multiplexing them under one, we would just have them make more than one notation verifier.
Yep, that makes sense.
Maybe we should call that out in the doc. Bin. Can we make a note on that, Bin? On the multi-tenant scenario?
Okay.
Thank you.
Bin having an array of like objects under the trust store, is that notation's way of handling a multi-tenancy? Because you can specify like different rules for different repositories.
Yes, and also the notation has different levels of like a system file. One is the user level, one is system level. And for user levels, they can have like different config and trust policy, trust stores for each different user. And that's one way to support multi-tenant.
Okay, I'll have to look into that a bit more. But as Eric was mentioning, so for Ratify, we'll have different verifiers.
Yeah.
If I understood correctly.
So Eric, if we have different, not like for example, we have like 5 notary verifiers configured, and how do they like get their trust stores and trust policies?
So we would have to, yeah, I guess that is why part of why I was like, okay, this becomes a lot more complicated as soon as we have to have it all on disk and we can't override the directory. Because in the current implementation for the verifier, like for the notation, we just have a cert pool that's loaded into memory. So we could have a bunch of notation verifiers that are pre-made and they all have their in-memory cert pools. But as soon as we need to have this structure on disk, like it then becomes a lot more complicated because we need to make like per created notation verifier, we would need to scaffold a new directory with the associated trust policy, like trust store structure as dictated by the CRD. So it's possible, but yeah, it becomes more work.
Yes, I think the trust policy is easier because it's ratified passing and loading, or loading and passing the trust policy. But for trust store, because in notation it's all file system based, and maybe we need to discuss. I will discuss with notation team. So maybe they can support the in-memory trust store. So in that case, it might be easier for us.
Yeah, that's why, like, more or less with the notation verifier that we have today, if you look at like what we use, we are really just using like the signature validation function. Like that's really what
Yes.
we're using. And so now notation has added all this stuff, and it's good stuff, but it now is severely complicating the way that we integrate with it. So some of those things we just haven't thought about because we were just using the .verify function. So yeah, we'll have to think about like that. That's part of why, like, once we move to this, like we can't use CSI, like we can't use the drivers anymore, because we have to, when users CRDs a new trust store trust policy, we have to scaffold that on the pod's disk on the fly. So yeah, there's not gonna be an easy way around that one. And that's also, purely hypothetical, because we haven't really addressed multi-tenancy like at the executor level right now. Like you can have more than one verifier, but there's the logic and like to namespace scope things, it doesn't exist right now.
Right.
Is the scope in notation or like in the trust policy? Can we leverage that?
When you say scope, you mean the scope identified in the trust policy?
Yeah, for the repository.
Yeah, I mean, we'd still be doing like directory shuffling on disk, but theoretically for all the verifiers, you could use one trust policy root, and then underneath it, you could use like different subdirectories to represent different verifiers, but then it kind of bleeds into the trust policy, because then the trust policy has to be like subdirectory aware when they're defining the CA, like the path. So I still don't think that really gives us an out.
Okay. Sounds like when we need to support multi-tenancy, we'll have to have another design discussion.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Binbin, for the walkthrough. Jimmy and anyone from Kara's team, do you have any feedback on the integration plan?
Eric kind of covered all of my concerns and thoughts. If something else comes up, I'll comment and encourage anyone on my team to comment too.
Thank you.
I'm gonna have to look a little deeper. I think on the previous call we had talked about using writing a custom notation verifier, and I'm concerned about the trust policy and how we would get to it. So I had to figure that one out.
I see. Jimmy, would you see the custom plugin like loading the trust policy similar to?
Yeah, it would have to be able to at least get to it.
Yep. I think the timeline of Binbin, what stage are we on? We're targeting to implement stage 1 in 2 weeks.
Yes, so I think that we have a date for stage 1 on November 28th for the code completion, and actually I've done the most part of the code, and I'm doing the integration test, end-to-end testing for now. And
Oh, wow.
Sounds like bugs, so I'm fixing that.
Okay,
yeah, so,
cool.
Yeah, actually, I just found an issue, so it's also on the agenda. It's about the ORAS RC4, because when I bumped up the notation to RC1, I also need to bump up the ORUS to RC4. And in ORUS RC4, there is a breaking change that it will only support the OCI artifact instead of the ORUS artifact. And so that means a lot of stuff will be broken. Like for example, our GitHub, the actions, the CSV stuff will be broken. And also, I know the ACR will support OCI artifact in like early December, but I don't know if AWS has a plan to support that. Because if we merge the notation integration PR, then everything will be broken in like ACR and ECR. And ACR would come back in early December, but if we don't have a plan for like ECR, it will just keep failing the value citation.
So if I understand you correctly, this is a question between ORUS
Yes, ORUS.
references versus OCI.
Yeah.
As far as I know, we don't have any intent to go live with ORUS. We intend, and we're using it right now for testing, obviously, but we intend to go live with OCI references.
Okay, gotcha.
So Binbin is the concern address. Like, would you be able to bump up the version to RC4?
Yeah, I think it's good if it is ECI is not using, or the AWS is not using ORUS.
I mean, we use it right now, obviously, for
Oh, you
testing.
use
But
for,
we're just waiting for OCI references to be available so that we can move those over. And then it's kind of a, a chicken and egg thing, right? Because we realized that you guys moving to Ratify, moving to OC, to the OCI references will break, what we have. But at the same time, if we want to move to OCI references and Ratify is not ready, then we're still broken. So, I think we all need to move to OCI references. I don't know any way around that.
Cool. So Binbin is good to go ahead with the upgrade.
Yeah.
yeah, I think we have to do it.
Just one question, Binbin. Do you know if the notation CLI uses the new RC1?
So the new notation RC1 will include the RC4.
Okay, so like I'm
RC4.
just wondering if we want to re-sign using the new OCI reference types so that we can unblock our verifications, would we be able to do that?
Yes, I will do that, but that also depends on the ACR release in like early December.
Got it. Okay.
We will not pull the like OCR design.
Okay.
So there's like a small window where our end-to-end would break. Is that
yes,
right?
Yes, right. So currently I'm just testing on the dog food, but the dog food is not stable, so sometimes it will just be broken. But for the product, the prod ACR, we can't do the testing for now.
Got it. Yep, I will make a note of that in the notes. So people looking at the notes would be aware of this. So yeah.
Thank you.
It'll break end of November for a week, maybe. Hopefully not longer than a week. Cool. Anything else before we move on to the next item? Okay. I just want to ask about the scorecard failures, if anyone have any information about this. I think it's Akash, has this succeeded when it was enabled? at all, or have we always seen this scorecard failure?
I thought it was succeeding before. I don't know why it's failing now. Because I was looking closely at the action, and the output of the scorecard analysis is that file. So I don't know why it's saying it's not a valid serif file. So I think we have to look into this more, because it's just annoying to see the cross on all of our main branch. So
Exactly. Okay, and what is the value of it says secure supply chain security, but what is the verifying? Like, what is the value added?
yeah, I don't know exactly. I'm not sure if this was the one that generates the SBOM or what, but
okay.
yeah,
Well,
I
we'll
don't
look
think
into
Dave is
this.
here, so
Yeah.
Yep.
That's all right. So the next agenda, so Sajay suggested, he put in a note, so I just wanted to check with him, but he's not on the call right now. So he suggested moving all the meeting notes to the repository. Eric, do you know why?
Probably just to make them more I don't know, discoverable. Like in general, people I think having stuff being able to be found in the attached to the repo is good. Is
Okay.
desirable. The same thing with I know we have and I don't know if we've already taken stock and put links to them, but I know we have a handful of design docs and discussion docs scattered across the HackMD verse, and consolidating those into either GitHub discussions or a docs folder within the repo would probably just make them more discoverable for people.
Got it.
But
Is there
I don't know.
another open source project with meeting notes in the repository, like that doesn't require check-in?
I'd have to look. I mean, I know through okay, let's go look. You go look. I know we have the discussions section.
Yep.
So I don't know, maybe that's a reasonable place to put these. I'd have to look at what other people are doing. I mean, the only one that I've closely analyzed is Gatekeeper, and I think they use Google Docs. So
Yep.
I can't they're not that much different than what we do, but I'd have to look around to see if it's common.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, if anyone have any suggestion, let us know on where to keep the meeting notes. Yeah, and I'll be out November 29th. So I want to check with Toddy, Akash, will you be able to host the community meeting, or Louise? Just want to find a volunteer.
yeah, I can host it, or
No, I don't think I have the Zoom meeting, so I don't think I can start it.
Yeah. If Akash is available, you already have the details, Akash. Are you be happy to?
yeah, I'll
host
do
this?
it. I'm available.
Thank you so much. Akash will be hosting. Cool. Yeah, before we wrap up, is there anything else people like to discuss? Okay, cool. I guess we're right on time. Then I haven't got a chance to speak to Joshua, and I think Jeff was on the call earlier, but welcome to the Ratify community meeting, and we'll hope to see you again next time. Have a great week, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks, Susan.